It didn't take very long after we finished recording yesterday, but Wendell Carter has a fresh new extension, what the Magic are betting, and how this sets them up today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is October 8th. It will be October 9th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, Wendell Carter signs a fresh, actually a max extension, not the kind of max you're thinking of. He signs a new extension with the Orlando Magic that keeps him with the team through the 2029 season. What it means for the Magic and what the Magic are betting on today on Locked On Magic. But before we get into any of that, I want to thank you all again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I will be completely honest with you. This was not on my radar. Like, I knew that Wendell Carter was extension eligible and that the Magic had until October 21st to get a deal done with him, but he had 2 years left on his contract. With the Magic very invested in other parts of their lineup, I felt like this was the one player who might get lost in the shuffle. The one player who, for lack of a better way to phrase it, felt a little replaceable. I think that's unfair. I am a Wendell Carter fan. But it felt like this was the area where the Magic might look to dangle some meat for an upgrade, or they have Goga Bitadze, who's been pretty solid. A chance to say, we can get by with Goga Bitadze if we need to upgrade elsewhere. So I was shocked, maybe an hour and a half after we were finished with our live show yesterday after the Magic's first preseason game, when the news came down, first reported by Shams Charania, and then later confirmed that the signing occurred by the Orlando Magic, that Wendell Carter was signing an extension. It is a 3-year extension, reportedly $59 million, so it averages out to about $20 million per year. He'll get paid $21 million in the last year of that deal, and this extension kicks in after these 2 years. So the Magic now have him under contract for 5 more years through the 2029 season. That mythical 2030 is out there. It's coming. This is, again, it is a max extension. It is 140% of his previous salary, which is the max the Magic could give him in this kind of an extension. So while it's not like a Franz or Paolo max, this is a significant deal. Now, Wendell Carter was probably a below market player as far as how much he was getting paid already. And there was at least some thought that maybe he might hold out for more money. And certainly a lot for him to prove. But the Magic essentially said, we believe in this team. We believe in our group. We believe that it's better to keep everyone together. We'll talk about how the books are set up coming up in a minute and why this signing might have more to do with that. But the bottom line is this. Assuming there are no changes or no trades, which is a pretty big assumption, the Orlando Magic are betting on Wendell Carter as their center. They're betting on his versatility, his ability to spread the floor as a three-point shooter, his ability to screen, excellent screener. But more importantly, they are betting on his health. Just like Wendell Carter spent most of this summer, most of his offseason, trying to improve his health. And obviously it is frustrating to say that, and it's frustrating to talk about that, considering Wendell Carter sprained his ankle, rolled his ankle, going up for a contest a shot on Monday in the Magic's preseason opener. Considering all of that, the timing was weird. Like the timing was odd and fans noted it, but no doubt about it. This is a bet that Wendell Carter's injury issues are behind him and the Magic can see the best version of him. There is no getting around it. I am a Wendell Carter supporter. I hope that is clear. If it isn't, I am saying it outright. But he had his worst season in a Magic uniform last year. All lows for him with 11 points per game and 6.9 rebounds per game. Lowest marks for him since his arrival in 2021. The only thing he seemed to do better was shoot threes, about 37.5%, I believe, from three last year. His best mark, but again, only on 3.1 attempts per game. It's not like he's a volume three-point shooter or anything like that. To give a guy an extension off of that means you believe in the player and you recognize that, yeah, last year was a bad year. And Carter will tell you that too. Carter said, I believe at Media Day, that he felt like he was less aggressive because of the injury that he had. He felt like he was always playing catch-up. And again, yes, he is playing catch-up again, even if he is day-to-day and just misses Wednesday's game. He's sitting out and not getting the kind of continuity, not getting the kind of synergy and synchronizing with his teammates the way that they need to after the way that they looked on Monday afternoon. Carter is a worthy player. I would I've said this a lot in the Nikola Vucevic era. Carter is a solid center. He is a starting caliber center in this league. And he's the kind of player that you don't give up without having his replacement ready. Now, if you think that's Goga Bitadze, great. If that's the case, and the Magic are set, they got an extra asset to use in trades. But Carter is really a solid player. He's not spectacular. He's not making the crazy blocks. And, I think probably his biggest issue is his play around the rim, even though he is a solid rim protector. He gave up 58% shooting at the rim, which now isn't the best in the league, but it's certainly not the worst. It's about middle of the pack, upper middle of the pack. He does a lot of things well, really well, in fact, even if they don't show up on the highlights. And that's what the Magic need right now. And in fact, if you look at things, the Magic know what they're getting in him. They know that he fits what they want to do and has the skill set that they want to pair with their players. And he's on this really affordable contract. Even this extension is like super affordable. It's like 18, 19, 21 million. And that is going to be super affordable in the next few years. Like a $20 million, if you could get a starter for less than $20 million per year, you're going to be doing really, really well in 2029. Like, again, because the numbers are about to get crazy here again. Carter, I don't know if Carter's the future. I do believe he's earned the right to prove himself. I said this last year, and obviously last year, the injury kind of slowed him down. And I was surprised by this signing and by this extension because I thought it was very much Carter has to spend the next 2 years proving that he is the right guy. Clearly, a few things are at play here. One, the Magic very much believe in their continuity and very much believe in having guys that they depend on and know really well. The Magic are also over the cap, so replacing Wendell Carter would not be easy if you let him walk in free agency. This saves that trouble a little bit. But two, this is about Wendell Carter believing in what the Magic are doing. If I were Mike Miller, Wendell Carter's agent, I might have advised him to say, hey, you could get this contract. You could get, this max raise that you got, this max extension that you got. And it's a max extension for this type of extension. You could get this kind of a max extension and be set up, and maybe the security is worth it for you. But if you're the player that you think you are in this market with how few teams have centers, I've had my Pelicans friends ask me, I've had my Lakers friends ask me, I've had a lot of friends ask me about Wendell Carter Jr. There is a definite trade market for him. And as we saw this summer, the center market was not particularly strong. Teams need centers, need reliable centers. They need young centers. At 25 years old, Carter's still got a lot of good basketball ahead of him. Carter could have held out and bet on himself. But as he told Josh Cohen up in of OrlandoMagic.com in San Antonio, he's been on this journey with this team, and he's bought into what this team is doing too, and is bought into his role within this team as well. That's essentially what the Magic are buying here. Yes, they are betting on health for a player who's never played more than 62 games in the season. They are betting on his varied skill set being very good, not just merely good. They're betting on a lot, but they know this guy. They know what he's about. They know how he fits into this team. They know him. And that right now, for the Magic at least, for how well they played, for how much they've grown year over year, for now, that's enough. Of course, I think we all sense, everybody knows, change is going to come to this team one way or another. And while this is very much a play to keep a very good player, it's also a play to set themselves up for the next move. We'll talk about how that plays into what comes next coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. Halloween is here, and we like to have fun this time of year with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts, the supernatural, and all that? Nothing is scarier than having to face yourself sometimes and having to understand what makes you tick or what's really setting you off. Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. I've used therapy throughout my life. It has helped me so many times to clearly identify the issues in my life and to start finding solutions, or just to address and recognize them when they're happening so that I can deal with them in a more productive manner. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Before we get on to our next segment, talking a little bit about how the Magic's books are set up, I want to remind everyone, Wednesday is the day. Today is the day. Make sure you've made all final preparations for Hurricane Milton. It is coming for Central Florida. It's going to cut straight across the state. The eye is pretty much going to go just south of I-4, I think, or just a little bit south of Orlando. It's pretty much going to bisect the state like that. We are expecting the forecasts that I have seen as I'm recording this are that the majority of the storm is going, the worst parts of the storm are going to hit us overnight Wednesday night into Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon. So Thursday's a complete wash. Nothing's going on Thursday. Stay inside, be bunkered up, find some video games, listen to some Locked On Magic. Be prepared. So if you have not done so already, please spend your Wednesday getting ready, making your plan to ride this thing out. Hopefully the storm surge isn't as bad as they're predicting for our friends on the west coast of Florida, on the Gulf Coast of Florida. If you're in an evacuation zone out there, please listen to your local authorities and follow their instructions on this as well. We're lucky here in Central Florida. Typically, storms do tend to dissipate by the time they reach Orlando, but we're still probably going to be dealing with a Category 3 or Category 2 storm, which is still very, very dangerous. So please spend your Wednesday making sure you made all your final preparations for this storm. We're going to get through this. Don't worry. We always do. Thursday is going to be an indoors day, but please make sure you are prepared for the storm. If you live in Central Florida, if you don't live in Central Florida, or you don't live in Florida, thank you all for your thoughts and prayers. Thank you for everything. We're good at this. This is one thing Floridians know how to handle a storm, but you still got to be prepared, because if you're not prepared, that's when you get caught. And so you don't want to get caught as well. I will be here. I want to make sure this is clear. As long as I have power, I'm going to have an episode of Locked On Magic for you after the game on Wednesday. But obviously that's like very low on the totem pole of things that need to be done. But I should be okay. Thank you for concern for those that have been concerned. I'm more concerned for my neighbors, especially our neighbors on the west coast of Florida as they prepare for the storm. Okay, hard transition here, but I want to make sure I noted that as a person with a public platform and public space. So there's been a lot of questions about this Wendell Carter extension, because there are a lot of questions about Wendell Carter, and we can debate the merits of signing Wendell Carter after the worst season of his time with the Magic. We can debate whether this guy truly is the starting center for the Orlando Magic when they are a championship team, which by 2029, they should be competing for a title. You can go back and listen to that episode about when the Magic's championship window will open. These are all fair and legitimate questions to ask. These are all things that we should be pondering and thinking about as we get ready for this thing, as we consider this contract, as we consider this extension. But honestly, while all that's important, and again, I do think the Magic believe in Wendell Carter. I do think they see him as a solid piece of this team and someone that they can trust and build around. Whether he's the center when they're winning championships, I think that's still a fair question to ask, and I think there's still some information to gather there. But that's not the point today. That's not the point here. Honestly, I think what the Magic did with Wendell Carter on Monday, or finalized on Monday, that's just how the league is going to do business now. It's been a trend for a while now that free agency is not how players move. It's been a trend for a while now that the way players switch teams is through trades. And the elite teams, because most of them are over the cap, they're not going to go out and sign Paul George like Philadelphia did. That's rare these days. That doesn't happen. It's James Harden forcing his way from Houston to Brooklyn, and then forcing his way from Brooklyn to Philadelphia, and forcing his way from Philadelphia to the Clippers. Not that you want that to happen, but there's a reason why there's so much obsession over the trade market, why our best time for traffic is February during the trade deadline. What the Magic are actually doing here, and what I think the Magic did a really good job of this summer, is they began to set their books up. They began to assemble the large contracts they're going to need now that they are over the cap. And the Magic were over the cap before the Wendell Carter extension. They're over the cap before the Jalen Suggs extension, which we will talk about here in a minute. The Magic are setting themselves up to... The Magic are setting themselves up now to be able to make the next big trade. And if you're a team like the Magic, you can't afford to lose critical players for nothing. I'm not talking like Markelle Fultz, maybe a little bit Markelle Fultz, but I'm not talking about guys like Joe Ingles, a veteran one-year deal. I'm not talking about that. Your core key players, your starters, your key reserves, you need them under contract. You need to know with certainty what their worth is, what their value is on the trade market, so that you can go out and make the big move when it's time. We've talked about this all offseason. Why didn't the Magic make a big trade? Some of it was the guy wasn't out there. The guy they were looking for wasn't out there. So they wanted to kick the can down the road, but they can't exactly kick the can down the road with their cap room anymore. They couldn't roll their cap room over another year like they did last year. And so instead, what they've done is they've added players that are key to their team on reasonable contracts. Just look at the numbers again. Wendell Carter is going to be paid $18.1 million in 2027. $18.1 million. That is projected to only be 10.6% of the salary cap, according to our friends at Spot Track. Franz Wagner, for instance, that'll be the second year of his max extension at $41.8 million, will count for 24.5%. Paolo Banchero will be at 25%. I imagine Jalen Suggs will be somewhere in the 20 to 20%. You're committing essentially 65, 70% of your cap to your top three players. Again, the Magic will be over the cap, so it's not crazy. But the Magic now have a lot of these deals that they can move. A lot of these deals that will be valuable to other teams. Look, Jonathan Isaac, $14.5 billion in 2027. That's just 8.5% of that projected cap in 2027. And you combine that, let's just do it for instance, you combine that 14.5 from Jonathan Isaac with that 18.1 from Wendell Carter, that's $32.6 million that you can now acquire in a trade. And you can find ways to combine players like that all throughout the Magic's roster now. Goga Batadze, $7.6 million, and Anthony Black at 10.1. That's $17.7 million you can now acquire in a trade. If Wendell Carter is truly the trade chip, now he's a healthier salary. Now you can combine him with a lower salary, and the Magic now have some nicer salaries to trade. Like, let's say 2027, they want to move Gary Harris. Well, Gary Harris will be free agent, so that's a bad example. That they want to move, say, they'll add Mo Wagner's a 2-year, $22 million deal. Let's say they add him to another year at $11 million. They could trade Wendell and Mo Wagner, not that they would, for $29 million in salary coming back. And they won't probably be over the first apron at that point so that they can make these deals. That's the point of all this. And I think increasingly, that's the kind of business we're going to see. Sure, Wendell Carter could hit free agency. He could get a $20+ million deal or whatnot. He could. But your options then become limited because all of these teams, all these elite teams, these playoff level teams don't have the cap room to sign anybody. And so to me, that's the point. I do take Wendell Carter at his word when he says, I believe in what this team is doing. I want to be a part of what this team is doing. I take him at his word. He wants to be in Orlando. I want him in Orlando. I hope it works out. I hope he's the starting center for the Orlando Magic when they win a championship. But when you look at the Magic's books now, they start to look more and more like the other teams that are competing for championships. Not maybe the high-end salaries that have that, but the way those salaries are structured, the way those salaries are stacked up against each other, the way those salaries can be used in these major trades that these championship level teams complete. When Orlando is ready to compete for championships and are on the trade market and are fishing for that star to get them over the top, they now have the players to get it done. They're now set with players who can help them get it done. And to me, that's the bigger point. That's the bigger point of all this. Honestly, like everything else is fluff, is nice, is part of it. But this is the bigger picture item of this. As the Magic are building their books so they're ready when the trade opportunity comes around. That's what they did this offseason with bringing back all the players they brought back and the way they structured those salaries. It's what they're doing with Wendell Carter. And again, I hate reducing these players and these people and their livelihoods to trade assets and numbers on a page, but that's the business. We cannot ignore that. That is the business. And while I think keeping Wendell Carter is good, at this price especially, is very good business for this Magic team, they are still going to be woefully underpaying a starting center, a solid starting center. The Magic are also set up for the next big move when they're ready and when it comes about. And that's what this deal is. That's why you keep your players when you're successful. When you're not successful, don't keep your players. But when you're successful like the Magic have been, keeping your players like this helps so much. And so the Magic have one more piece of business to take care of. When is Jalen Suggs going to get his? We'll chat a little bit about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Right now at FanDuel, they've got so many great offers, getting you ready for the NBA season too, including the Orlando Magic at 47.5 wins, over under 47.5 wins. The Orlando Magic as favorites to win the Southeast Division. They've got them, I believe, fifth to win the Eastern Conference. And of course, you can bet opening night with the Orlando Magic currently 1-point underdogs to the Miami Heat on opening night. And if you're really like this, the Magic are currently 2-point favorites over the San Antonio Spurs on Wednesday. Don't bet preseason games, guys, but they do offer preseason games there too. If basketball's not your sport, which thank you for listening to the show if it's not, if you want to get a jump start on college football this weekend, UCF is 3.5-point favorites over Cincinnati, assuming that game gets played on Saturday. So far, so good. Florida, 14.5-point underdogs at Tennessee this weekend. You can get all this great action over at FanDuel, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So the Orlando Magic completed this piece of business. Again, caught me a little bit by surprise. I didn't think that they would do this. I thought that they would let Wendell Carter play out and see where he's at before engaging in this. Obviously, they had a deadline anyway, so they're clearly comfortable with where he's at. But the one we're all expecting to get done is Jalen Suggs. We were all expecting a Jalen Suggs contract extension really any day now. The deadline is October 21st. Why there would be a hard line, what a sticking point in negotiations might be, and might be a salary, and might be an incentive, who knows. We are expecting, and we should expect, Jalen Suggs to get an extension somewhere in the range of $27 to $28 million per year. I think the market's pretty set unless Suggs thinks he can get an Emmanuel Quickley deal up into the 30s. And if that's the case, he should bet on himself, see what he does this year with the added responsibility the Magic are putting on him. After that first game, there's still a long way to go for him to be the point guard. But again, if the Magic's philosophy is seemingly to keep this team together, if the Magic's philosophy is seemingly to have all these guys compete together, to grow together the way that they have, and to line their books up with their big salaries, a Jalen Suggs extension has to be in the making. It has to be in the offing. It has to be coming down soon. Suggs is just frankly too valuable to this team not to have something in place. And my expectation is we will get a Jalen Suggs extension announcement very soon. Probably next week, to be perfectly honest. Suggs has shown himself to be everything that this Magic team embodies. He is selfless. He's all about his teammates. He defends at a crazy high level. He's constantly about self-improvement. He has embraced and wrapped his arms around every piece of this Orlando Magic culture. Everyone calls him the head of the snake on defense. I think he's the heartbeat of this team. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, sure, but he is the heartbeat of this team. He makes this team go. And so it seems inevitable that Jalen Suggs is going to sign with this team, sign an extension. For his part, he was asked about this at media day, quoted a Bible verse to us. He said he's going to let his agents take care of it. His focus is on playing. And that's what all these guys say. Jeff Weltman, obviously not going to disclose how negotiations are going. He said he said that, they have a good relationship. Suggs is very important to the team. All signs point to something getting done. Why is it taking so long again? It might be an incentive package. It might be trying to wring their arm to get an option in there. It might be dollars and cents. It might be they're holding out for an extra million or whatever the case may be. But knowing this Magic team, knowing how they operate, knowing what they value, they're going to get something done. They're not going to abandon. If they're going to sign Wendell Carter to an extension, the way that they signed him to an extension, they're going to make sure they take care of Jalen Suggs. They're going to make sure that they keep him around because he's their project. He's their homegrown project. He's the guy that everybody was ready to give up on after 2 years. They stuck with him, and he delivered big time for them. As much as Paolo and Franz are the reason why the Magic made the playoffs last year, Jalen Suggs is as big, and his growth is as big as any part of that. What got the Magic to the 5 seed was Jalen Suggs. Paolo and Franz got them to the playoffs. They would have been in the playoff conversation if Jalen Suggs played like he did his first 2 years. Jalen Suggs got them over that next line, and I think the Magic believe, especially if he can grow as a playmaker and creator, that Jalen Suggs can take them to the next, to even further levels and to that next level again. So again, when's it going to happen? When is it going to get done? When is this piece of business going to be done? I am sure Jeff Weltman would prefer that the Magic's business be done before the season starts. And obviously, this has to be done by October 21st. I'm sure Jeff Weltman prefers not to have anything lingering over the team of this importance and this scale, but throughout the entire season. The Magic are clearly happy to spend. That's not the issue here. The Magic are clearly ready to invest in him. And frankly, it's just a matter of time before Jalen Suggs puts pen to paper and signs a new contract with this team. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the places to podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Once again, before we get to that, now that you're done listening to Locked On Magic, make Locked On Fantasy Basketball your second listen of the day. Become a fantasy basketball expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Josh Lloyd. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now back to the serious stuff. Once again, Wednesday is your last day to prepare. Thursday, we're all going to be in our houses here in Central Florida. We're all going to be riding this storm out, Hurricane Milton. Please, 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 please listen to local authorities. Listen to what they're saying to help you prepare for the storm. Keep the news handy. I'll be flipping back and forth to my friends over at Spectrum News 13. I'll probably flip through the other stations. I love my guys at WESH, FTV, KMG, all the local affiliates. Sorry, I don't know anyone at WFL, but whatever your local news station is here in Central Florida, keep them on that last button and flip over every so often just to see what's going on. But Wednesday is your last day to prepare because Thursday this storm is going to hit us. It is a big one. It is a major storm. And even if it weakens by the time it gets to us here in Orlando, obviously our friends on the West Coast are going to be hurting. And anything can happen. These storms get very, very nasty and can be very unpredictable, even if they're considerably weakened. So please stay safe over the next couple of days as Hurricane Milton works its way through Florida. And of course, we'll be better on the other side for it, as we always are as Floridians. I am still planning to do an episode of Locked On Magic tomorrow after the Magic's game against the Spurs. That's always pending whether I have power. If you remember during Hurricane Helene, I think my lights were flickering while I was recording. But I do plan on having an episode tomorrow recapping the Magic's game against the Spurs. If I don't, my power is out, and that's that. There's nothing we can do about that. But I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Please be safe over the next couple of days. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.